Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religion. Tonight we have Mac for our regular Wednesday show. Our insomniac zebra friend is taking a pass on this week, as he sometimes has to, which we fully understand. Love you, Steve, if you watch this later. Okay? All right. So, going on. I'm going to give you the floor because you had a thing, and you talked to me in email, and if you wanted to even expound upon what you wrote in the email to me, feel free. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Peace and respect back. Thanks for dropping by. So, you know, in case anybody is just landing on this page accidentally or it doesn't know any context, I'll try to give a little bit. Richard has a reading frame for sacred text, especially the Bible, that takes things in a completely different direction than most people would expect. And through lots of conversations, dozens at this point of conversations with Richard, I've been narrowing down sort of exactly what he sees, and I've been adopting that reading frame myself to various levels of success. And a lot of what Richard works with, at least with me, is in the Old Testament. And he, I think just yesterday, did a really great visit with MathPig over on his channel about the book of Revelation. And this is something he's been over before, but it really, I will always appreciate any time spent on that book. It's a really worthy text to examine, in my opinion, and has a lot of depth to it and a lot of specificity when it comes to Richard's reading frame. So that's all very important. But recently I returned to one of my favorite parts of the Bible of all time since I was a child, which is the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. You know, when I was in Bible school or whatever, Bible study school, if you had asked me my favorite book in the Bible, I would have said Matthew. I relate to Matthew. He's like the soft-spoken apostle, you know, he's just sort of gentle and sweet. And I think of myself that way. At least I try to be that way. And so, but the Sermon on the Mount is something that I've always felt very inspired by and very, well, it seems appropriate for it to be central to Jesus's ministry. It seems to encapsulate what Jesus was trying to explain to his followers, or will be trying to explain to his followers. And now, looking at it with Richard's reading frame as best as I can see some of it. I can see how, for instance, the mount itself could be representative of heaven. I'm not sure, but it could be representative of that. I can kind of piece that together. The people that Jesus is speaking to, therefore, are already in heaven, possibly. But I'm reaching there, and I already need Richard's help with this part. But the main hang up I have is, I think it's 5:5, Matthew 5:5, where he said, "Blessed are the meek." And traditionally, the meek are considered to be honored and embraced in this passage in an unusual way, in a way that they wouldn't otherwise be in that society. Like Jesus saying, "I know that you're called meek, and I know you're unvalued because you're called weak or meek, but in heaven or on the new earth, you will inherit that earth. The meek are blessed because you will inherit that earth." And so I immediately thought, okay, I bet if I look into this text, it'll be clear that this is a new earth that's being spoken of, or some kind of, but it's actually the opposite. It's specifically speaking of dirt and this planet. And I think that's very clear in the translation. So why? So, okay, so that trips me up. That makes me think, okay, Jesus is talking about not a blessed people, but people that are going to inherit something that's getting destroyed, that's getting wrecked out from under them. That's not a blessing.
It's not very nice, is it?
No. So what's going on there? And so I reached all over, and I'm really kind of flailing, but I considered that maybe I don't have a good understanding of the word blessed or blessed as it's often read. Possibly that's it. Maybe the meek are actually not valued. Maybe the meek are that Jesus is referring to are sort of the other side, sort of the side that's too meek to embrace the truth. Maybe so anyway, if you could expound on that. I definitely have the feeling, especially after your email response, that this is going to be just kind of a slam dunk for you, but I don't care. I'll be pleased with the conversation either way. So.
I think that's depth enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, the Sermon on the Mount, first of all, is famous. People who disagree with the morality of the Bible still look at the Sermon on the Mount and go, "Oh, that's nice. That seems, holistic, pure, something like that." But I think when they do that, they're too often not looking for an overall context in the Bible, but they're wanting it. They're wanting it to apply to themselves. Okay. Peace and respect. Maynard saves B. Beck, of course, and Kevin and Skinny. Welcome, Skinny. Hey. Skinny, type more. I don't know enough about your brain. Type more. Okay. I know that I have said this like 1,000 times. A set of instructions is for the apt student. The apt student in the story is Jesus. The set of instructions is for Jesus. Real simple syllogism. Find a hole in it. Although I didn't use the right words for it to be a syllogism, it still basically is. So this is the first time in my life. It's not that this is surprising to me at all, but this is the first time I actually went and looked up all these words.
Oh, cool.
What is it? Matthew 6 or 5 or what was it?
It starts in 5. It's Matthew 5 through 7.
Yeah, it's really. The only thing I didn't write down was where it was located in the book. What a goofus. Okay, so you tell me, Mac. Would you rather I left it as a mystery and gave you all the clues? Or would you rather I solved the mystery from the start?
No, let's go Socratic on this. I'm willing. I've got time, and it's a good process.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a great thinking exercise.
Yeah.
So
I got it up on Blue Letter right now. So
cool. Well, let's just go ahead and share it with everybody. Okay. And you can read that all right, Mac?
Yep, just fine.
So it's Matthew 5:1 through to the end of it, right? Mm-hmm. And this word's the Sermon on the Mount or the Beatitudes. This is something religious people made up to label this part of this book.
Okay.
And in no way at all are any of those words, although they took the words out of these verses, but these words are not this title here at the top, Sermon on the Mount, is not, it's not actually in the words.
Got it.
Okay. So the first line there, and seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain. This is so clumsy and crap. And when he was set, his disciples came unto him. Uh-huh. But there's some key words there, like mountain, multitude, set, and disciples, mm-hmm. right? And we already know the his, or the he that it's referring to there is Jesus, right? Right. Okay, that much is granted and obvious because it's said so much. It turns out that the word multitude here is actually a possessed or earned multitude. Mm. So it's not just a random group of people. It's people that Jesus has bought with his own money. sometimes called his own silver. But it's not talking about earthly money. It's talking about his acts and what his acts earn. It's not talking about paying cash. The words went up right here. Actually, in modern thought process, should be more like placed his first foot to ascend. More like that, not just like walking uphill.
Okay.
It's more like the idea of claimant by putting your foot down in an act of ascension.
Right.
So it's not just he went up. That's
Gotcha.
Poor at best. As you expected, high mountain here. Definitionally, the mountain lifts itself above the plain.
Okay.
That's the definition of mountain right there. There's different definitions of what turns out to be mountain in English. But this one is not a looming mountain. It's a mountain that lifts itself above the plain.
Isn't that amazing? I see that there. To rise or rear.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Lifting itself above the plain.
Right.
So that's heaven.
That is definitely. And we're in the English, it reads, and when he was set. It's more like, and when he took his seat to dwell in.
Okay.
Because the word set here is the idea of permanence of placement.
Right.
It's not just I sat on a rock or something. It's not like that.
It's more like getting knighted.
Yeah, yes. It is actually a lot more like taking your, well, not being knighted, because being knighted is the authority from somewhere else, but claiming your earned authority. More like
right.
that.
Okay, right.
But something similar to being knighted, but not exactly the same. And that leads to, let's see, his disciples came unto him. Well, yeah, they did, but it's actually he put out to understand toward his disciples or students, and that's in an act to draw them near. Yeah, that's the end of that line.
Maynard Saves points out that into a mountain is a different idea than onto a mountain.
It is. But the into is the correct word here. But they missed the went up part and just like talked about it like he's walking up a hill. Right. And it's easy for us from this sentence to glean maybe he went into a cave or something to go into the mountain.
Exactly.
But the reason that makes sense is that it's hollow inside is because it's heaven. It's not a solid object that you can't go into.
Right.
So good observation on Maynard's part. Yeah, it would be very clumsy to say you went up into a mountain. It doesn't really make sense, does it?
Right.
Okay, the next line. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, which I don't know why there's a comma there in a separate verse, but anyway.
Yeah, that's strange.
That probably, those words, it's a little bit, in the English, it's kind of vague. It doesn't have the depth that it does in the Greek, you know? So it's actually something more like after he draws them near to him, the last line. And what he does is to individually open them. Okay?
Open them?
Open them to him. He opens them to him in one stroke. Specifically, like all at one time, like really effectively, right? And then what appears here, opened his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
is actually pretty damn terrible too. Uh,
I mean, if you were just talking about him talking, why point out that he opened his mouth to do it?
right. It seems a little bit like, no kidding, he spoke.
Yeah.
But he did it in charades? Of course he
Right.
spoke, right?
Right. So it must
But
mean something else.
but the translators didn't glean to that it's way overstated and for no evident reason. And then they didn't include the etymology of the words, which are more like opening the front edge, teaching by laying something forth.
Hmm.
And they translated open the front edge. In other words, a beginning. It can be the edge of a sword or the opening of a mouth, but it's the beginning of the idea. And they kind of left off here that they are only now starting to get it. And all the experience of the apostles before this, they don't really get what Jesus is saying. So this is like brand new stuff. You could say meat of the word, something like that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful description of a new idea. The edge of a sword, which, by the way, we don't, in our culture, we don't talk about the phenomenology of ideas enough, and how they grow and how you can nurture them and receive them and what they seem like, good metaphors for them.
Well, if you take a college course, you can get something like that. But in our everyday life, you're right. Our culture doesn't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of the shallowness of being an American or a citizen of the United States specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one. Blessed the poor in spirit, for theirs the kingdom of heaven. There's so much assumption there, I'm afraid. It's actually not very good. This should read something more like, oh, by the way, the idea of blessed is pretty solid right there. And that's probably the best word they could have used, is blessed. And it repeats.
Right. Okay.
So we can grant blessed as always being the correct word, because it seems that as I went through these, it is.
Okay.
So it actually reads more like blessed him. And it's not the him. It's not singular him. But it's the idea of him differentiated from the group. All right. And what it more reads is, blessed him who depended upon God and not himself, though generally capable.
One more time, please.
Blessed him who depended upon God and not himself, though generally capable.
Oh.
So it's talking about a he who is set apart, who depended on God, even though he is generally capable person.
Gotcha.
And then he will inherit all of the earth. See this earth right here? It's not part of the earth or a section of the earth. It's the whole damn thing.
The kingdom of heaven?
No. Oh, I skipped one. I actually skipped two.
Oh,
Please
okay. Sorry.
Forgive me.
No,
I went down to the one of your interest, inherit the earth.
Gotcha.
5:5.
Okay, I'm still on 5:3.
Sorry, and I'll backtrack.
No problem.
So the word meek here in 5:5 is someone who's capable but dependent on God.
Okay, got it. All right. Capable but dependent on God. Gotcha.
And then the inherit the earth part, that's inherit the whole of the earth. It's not some part of the earth. So this is very misleading for an English reader. Does that make sense so far?
I'm putting it together. So this is a person that we would describe as having extraordinary faith. Extraordinary
Yes.
because they're not even in a position where they're sort of cornered into believing, but they
Right.
don't need God, but they still surrender to God.
Yes. That's
Uh,
a pretty well-rounded idea there.
and that's the meek. And then they inherit the entire earth, is what you're saying.
See, if I look up, the problem is that if I look up the word right here, if I look up they is not a good translation, actually.
Okay.
Because it's autos, which is the same as a singular. It can mean himself, herself, themselves, itself, he, she, it. It means all of those things.
Gotcha.
And what decides how it's to be translated is the context, the usage.
Sure. Okay. And if we're basing the context on the previous couple of verses, then it's singular.
Yeah, so this actually should be singular, not a group.
Right. Or they in a non-gendered way, but specifically one person.
Right.
So blessed is this meek person, for they shall inherit the earth.
All of the earth as a singular unit.
I guess I'm still not clear on why that would be a blessing in this context.
Well, you want to continue with the puzzle? Because I did more.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, so let me see which one. Let's do 5:3 then.
Okay.
Which in the English reads, "Blessed the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Blessed we grant is fine.
Right.
But the word spirit here has an etymology of cringing, not just spirit as in the intrinsic essence, and also breathing.
Right.
But it's actually cringing, breathing hard, either physically or mentally. And it's probably both physically and mentally. Because this is like being mentally well, just downright damn scared. Okay, cringing.
Sure.
Right? And then breathing hard would be something that a person does when they're really scared.
Okay.
And then the word kingdom of heaven right here. Kingdom is assumed. It's not part of the text.
Okay.
And then the word heaven means habitation of God in the sky.
Sure. Well, that, no surprises there.
Right.
So, yeah.
So this is more like blessed, and it's not the word the blessed are the, that word the, they just it's kind of assumed.
Right.
But it's one of those general, like a royal the, if you will.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's blessed those who did, or him who did, or she who did cringe, breathing hard, due to, because the idea of them taking ownership that you see for theirs is
right.
Yeah, that's really not there at all.
Isn't that amazing? Wow.
Due to heaven in the sky. Due to the habitation of God in the sky. And let's see, the other one. Blessed for they that more than finish but comforted. That's actually pretty straightforward, and they got that pretty square on. There's really nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah, that one didn't confuse me much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense with the rest of the Bible.
I mean, you've told me that pretty much.
Yeah.
In different words. Don't worry, you'll be comforted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes on and it goes on and it goes on like this. But I'd like to point out some key words here, okay, which I think are perfectly translated. There's no other way to take the individual words. I'd like to point out the word righteousness right here.
Okay.
And merciful.
Righteousness.
Right? And pure. Right?
Uh-huh.
And you go back to righteousness again right here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, all these the and theys can be singular. It can be a singular individual. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. That's it. I didn't translate all of it. I only had an hour.
All right.
Peace and respect, Crypta and Dwayne.
Oh, hey, Crypta. Hi, Dwayne. All right, let me give it a shot here. Enough exposition. So, the meek shall inherit the whole earth. I think that does boil down to my original assumption, which is that it's a warning. It isn't a prediction.
Okay. Let me slow you down just a little bit.
Okay.
If I had to say in the Bible there was one who was capable but depended on God, who exercised righteousness, who was truly humbled, was fearful of God, that whole list, the whole Beatitudes part.
Right.
And actually was all those things.
Right.
Does that person inherit the earth?
Right. Yes.
But it's not talking about the dirt when it says earth.
It's the multitudes.
It's the people.
Yeah. It's the water. Yeah.
And this after having seen the multitudes.
Right.
Which when it says saw the multitudes, it says it's actually he awestruck perceived the deeply possessed multitude. So overall, what I think is going on here, Jesus went into that high mountain that elevates itself above the plain, i.e. heaven. He's talking to the 12 apostles, and he's describing himself. And this is the first time that they look at him and realize he's been describing himself. Of course, he spends all of his time talking about the Father, which is also, again, the same as him. So I think the Sermon on the Mount, the feeling of profundity within it is, it's the aha moment the apostles are going through that we're adopting when we read this. Free to speak, sir. It's your floor. What do you think of that?
I'm digesting it. I'm imagining it and digesting it. It certainly fits. It certainly fits. The first thing that comes to my mind is that your description just there of it, that it's sort of a epiphany, sort of a revelation to the followers at that point. That also maps pretty perfectly onto the traditional context of that sermon. That it's a first time for a lot of Christ's followers, and it's a moment of clarity and a moment of exposition in a way where it was all parables before and all of the rest. Gosh, that just clicked for me. Yeah. That's nice. Yeah, that's really cool. So it's still not clear to me the whole succession of Christ, and how that sort of functionally works.
I guess I don't understand what you're asking.
Like this
Father,
switches
son,
topics,
father, son,
but
father, son.
yeah, like that. Like,
Okay.
I know that the both of them would be involved in this moment, so there's a sort of like how does that all go down kind of question for me. But and that's definitely clarifies the 5-5 question. So I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to read all 3 of those chapters and read the Sermon on the Mount.
I find it really emotionally compelling, actually.
Yeah, I always have. I still get choked up reading it ever since I was little, and I certainly
Try to imagine yourself an apostle.
Yeah.
There with the Christ. And read it in that mind frame if you can. Wow. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. What a cool.
Okay, so topic change, because that only took 30 minutes.
Yeah. That was good.
So you said, okay, essentially what you said to me is explain the Trinity.
Okay. Yes.
I think that's basically what you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Explain the Trinity. Which isn't mentioned in the text.
Yeah, the word Trinity is not there, but it is mentioned. It's described more than once in a couple different places.
Yeah.
You could say the baptism by John, or you could say Gethsemane. You could say a few things.
Right.
But it's definitely explicit, although not stated as a Trinity. I think there's a really good reason it's not stated as a Trinity, because that would be an incomplete story. It never says there are these 3, only these 3, and that's the end of it. It never says that.
Right.
Although they are participant in God, and that's evident. When Jesus says things like, if you see me, you have seen the Father. That's like saying I'm a body double, and I'm a spiritual double, and I'm doing what I saw him do, or what I see him do. And that includes the ministry. It's during the ministry, the 3.5 years of the ministry of Christ, that he says, I am doing as my Father does before me. Why Christians skip that, or how? I mean, is that Jesus like sitting on the white throne in heaven? Is that what he's doing? Isn't that what they assume the Father does in that same time frame? In which case he's not. He's a liar. He's a bold-faced liar, because he would not see the Father doing what he is doing. But if he says that he does, then he's talking about his present tense experience of something his Father did in the past, which he is imitating. I.e., he's got it right there in his hand. Which makes perfect sense to me. He would have a copy of the Bible. Of course he would.
Right.
Like, how would he be without it? Like, he wouldn't let that go and just brush that off. So, of course, there's a problem of an infinite regress, Mac. And how do I solve that? And how far back does it go? And does it go back forever? Well, it mentions a starting point for the first Homo sapiens sapien, that whom we'd call Adam. And a person might say that I'm being unfair or inconsistent in some way, but it's consistent within the text. There is no Yahweh until there is Adam. That's worth noting. And it's the second recollection of Adam where the rib is taken. Whereas the first recollection of Adam and Eve are simultaneous.
That's right.
That's because first it's addressing our situation. And then it goes back to the actual beginning using the same names, but meaning the 2 singular individual first Homo sapiens sapien in existence. And gives definition from there, and then moves the story forward again. So it's kind of like a flashback.
Okay.
Something like that.
This is Genesis 2.
So first it's like, you're stuck on this planet. Here's how the stuff started. Calling all of mankind on the earth, male and female, Adam and Eve, as a group at first, and then starts giving definition. And wow, the definition gets really defined. Super, super nuanced and specific. So without addressing Moses and Joseph and Herod and the killing of the infants and all of that, to get to the exodus of Adam, where Adam leaves his homeworld and leaves Pharaoh behind and outright steals and says he's stealing. He says, borrow from your neighbors, but we got no intention of giving it back.
Huh.
That's called theft. I'm gonna have to take care of this. I don't want that before I miss it.
Oh,
I'm afraid it'll end up part of the permanent show if I don't get rid of it now, and it's a pain. I don't want that before I miss it.
No problem.
Pain in the butt. Stop porn bombing me. Quit it.
This isn't the best market for that.
Yeah. Boy, that stuff's showing up everywhere nowadays. Just like everyone's side chat. I'm not even a big channel, but I get it. Did you get it, Crypto? Thank you. Okay, so if I didn't make you a moderator, I should. And I guess from what you just wrote, I have, which I should have. That's good.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay. So apparently what's going on here is this is an earth. And the reason the earth is the same word as soil earth is because those terms are interchangeable, because it means the same thing. So it's like saying this is the earth, but it's a location. It's the location where there's soil.
Right.
Well, look at other planets. That's actually pretty damned good. They don't have stuff that's going to grow plants.
That's so true.
Yeah. I mean, there's some really, really distant ones, but nothing close by. You can look at Mercury, Venus, Mars. Go ahead. You're not going to grow stuff there. That's not going to work out.
No. Which
to colonize Mars, they're going to transport like minerals and stuff. But anyway. Okay, so let's just get to Earth iterations 22 through 24, which we're apparently the 24th Earth.
Okay.
So they take from Adam, the original genetic source, and they take pulverized material, pulverized as in so small your eyeball can't pick out any part of it.
Okay.
And that is used to make us, and it is first, before it makes us, it is made a little lower than the angels. That is, everyone in heaven would be fully realized, vivified, quickened. They're all fully quickened from birth.
Okay.
And they're not a little bit lower. They're not made lower.
Okay.
However, our kind is purposefully made lower, which is why at the end of the, which is why when eternal life is offered at the end of the Garden of Eden, when it has a flashback in chapter 6 of Genesis where it says man's only going to live 120 years, which means only 100. It's going to be less than 130. It reads, yet that man is flesh. That is, despite the fact that man has flesh, his days shall be numbered to 120 years. As if, and nobody knew it back then, flesh can live forever. Peace and respect, wild hearts, PP. As in like split pea soup, that kind of pea. I don't even know who that is, but he hangs around with Wild Heart and seems like a decent person. But anyway, so that we are in some way, the book claims, restricted. And put on an earth. That is, and there Jehovah put man whom he had formed. Had past tense before that. And I know this is a huge overview and there's a lot to cover. But I'm trying to only hit the highlights that are absolutely necessary. Where the Garden of Eden is described as a spinning pearl orbiting a light, where our family building blocks, namely people, clear water, sparkling water and clear air. That's a pretty good full description of the Garden of Eden. And outside of it, a flaming sphere and 12 angels around it, 12 cherubim, i.e. the zodiac, the sun, and the earth, with the moon at her feet, no less. Put here for a time. And it even defines how long the time is. A full run of the zodiac into the final age. That is, I will be with you to the end of the age. That is, your ideas of me will remain with you until this eon stops. And when the apostles asked, I know this is a lot. When the apostles asked, how do we get to the Last Supper, which is the same as the wedding ceremony, which is the same as the feast? Jesus replies astronomically and specifically astrologically. You will go through the gate. That's the limitations of a constellation. Into the city. That's the constellation itself. You'll follow a man carrying a pitcher of water. That's Aquarius. He will take you to the upper room, heaven. You will go to heaven during Aquarius. Which, no matter how ugly the calendars might be, we're in Aquarius now. All of the mathematical leeway is now used up. We're in Aquarius.
Well, doesn't that just mean that I don't know a lot about astrology, but doesn't that just mean that the sun is rising in that constellation? Isn't that what the age, like astrological ages mean?
Okay. All right. I see that. Okay. It would be very convenient if an Earth year were 365 days, but it's not.
I know.
And it'd be fairly convenient if it's 365.25. Wouldn't that be a nice round number? It's not. It's actually 365.250138888 days long.
Okay.
That's the exact number of a year. That's how many days. So because that last little bit's so tiny, no one's ever accounted for it in a calendar. You sort of can't.
Okay.
So the result is that exactly every 2,160 years, religious philosophers and theologians think it's 2,000 years in the Bible between these major time frames. They're close. They're only off by 160 years. They were pretty close on, actually. They did pretty good. But we now know because of NASA exactly how long it is.
Okay.
And if you do the math based on a leftover 0.000138888 days, the 0.25 being accounted for, then what you'll get is 30 degrees of reverse progression. And I'll describe what that is in just a second, through the zodiac. You'll get 30 degrees every 2160 years. Here's why. Let's say you're at perfect north in our orbit, right? So but I'm going to express it this way so you can see it better.
Sure.
All right. And then you go counterclockwise until you come back to north. But you didn't account for that 0.000138888 days. Tick. That's 1 year wrong. Tick. 1 year wrong. Tick. 1 year wrong. And that adds up to 30 degrees every 2160 years.
Okay.
Perfectly. Spot on. So I know NASA's right. Okay. Besides, they love math.
Yeah.
I'll trust them on math when there's no motivation to lie. I'll perfectly trust those guys. No problem. Okay. So from the beginning of the zodiac, which is north, or Capricorn. It's not the spring. It's not about when is life easy and when is life not so easy. It's talking about the ages of man. By the way, if you look into the carvings in the Great Hall of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid of Giza, that's the right words. I'm good at English. I speak English well. You'll see something that is called the ages of man. And people have interpreted it as the ages of an individual, like innocence into discovery, into relationship, into, and et cetera, et cetera. And it ends with the death. Okay. And you can say it's a person aging, going through life cycles, but bigger than that, it's all of mankind doing it. And with death or end comes enlightenment. And you'll see that clearly. All I say is Buddhism. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it. Right. The age of enlightenment, the age of Aquarius, is when the whole world is supposed to become woke. And it will. Because they'll get the actual enlightenment that wakes up our brains. And that in every prophecy everywhere, not just astrology.
Right.
Okay. So you go through that whole cycle. It's something around 23,700 years. By the way, that agrees with archaeology as to when mankind was in this exacting form with this exact brain. And when we became Gregorian society. It fits pretty darn good.
Okay.
Some will argue, but you can never get everybody to agree on anything.
Sure.
So it's okay that some argue. It's okay with me anyway. And then eventually comes the time of Aquarius, and the investment is collected on. We ascend, and we become part of that larger collective of ancient human beings. Not partly evolved, fully evolved ancient human beings. And we go forward and we terraform another Earth. But human nature being what it is, if you're going to do that, they're going to do stupid stuff. And they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to believe lies, and they're going to need their hero. So the 27,600 odd years is a countdown timer. Let's say you took the broadest genetic material that could be in a human being.
Okay.
If you can even imagine what that means, and you can't, but okay. Let's say you had a sample of Adam, right?
Yeah.
And you divided that into 3 major haplogroups. And then from there, about 15 ethnic groups. And you had that genetic material slightly dysfunctional. You restricted it. So aging would happen. They died of old age. And you gestated them to term, and you brought them to adulthood, and you took them to the side, and you said, look, the purpose that this huge group that you're different from has made you is because you, and they were probably grown up with this idea. Like they knew it from the time they were infants. They were told what they were. That they go forward and seed the next earth. That is, God put man into the garden whom he had formed. Formed somewhere else. Of course. Take care of this darn. Thank you, Crypta.
Yeah, thanks, Crypta. Fast on the draw.
Yeah, right on. Well, it doesn't appear as deleted in my StreamYard.
Yeah, I don't see it deleted either, but I've got YouTube over on my other screen, and it's deleted there.
All right. Well, that's terrible because you and I are 2 of the 6 viewers. But anyway, moving on. This will get about 30 to 50 views eventually. It will. But yeah, that's what they average. Okay, so So the Father gets to author the Bible. That is to say, his great commission of himself, he's part of it, and the apostles. And they will be distributing that all over the universe. And if you look into the world there, where it says, and preach the gospel unto the world, it means the whole world, not just this planet. It can be a much, much, much bigger idea than that. And I believe it is. So, and why all of this? Well, there's always,
Trinity.
the justification of suffering, that in a utopian society, we'd need some small amount who really get it, who have suffered. And these religious stories will be used to teach children what religion is, because in heaven they'll have no religion, they'll only have truth. And I don't even know if that answers it.
Yeah, well, it might be a categorical error to ask why of beings that are, so confoundingly more ancient and more broadly scoped than we even
but
can.
So do you become. You become one of those ancients to the next earth.
Well, I still can't answer the why. I mean, I can't imagine why I would want to seed another planet, or, well, I could see sort of seeding planets as like a gardening exercise, but I wouldn't necessarily, because I like gardening, I like growing things, but I really don't restrict my, my vegetables in any kind of meaningful way. I guess I prune things. Yeah. But this is a different metaphor, You're talking about, and I agree, like in terms of human development and individual development, that adversity is part of growth. I completely agree with that. That's not complicated.
Well, let me ask you a question on that.
Okay.
Now, whether you had a child on purpose or by accident, you kept it, which means essentially you did it on purpose.
That's true.
Because you had options. I'm aware of them.
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Why did I have children? That could be the answer.
It is.
It's a natural impulse, I guess.
We are the same as look. Evolution isn't a bunch of bull crap. It's described in the Bible that the first Adam, although maybe there was the number 2 fusion that made the difference between him and ape.
Sure.
But the slave apes and the experiments and all that stuff that didn't quite work out, and then he really didn't work out.
Right.
Adam really didn't work out as a slave. was some kind of purposeful manipulation of the genome. That's what that was. And maybe it's the number 2 fusion. I don't really know. Maybe it's multiple things, and that's only part of it.
Sure.
But we're still an evolved animal. That's what we are.
Right.
And we get deeply aware and emotionally attached to that which is us, i.e. offspring.
Right.
Mates. In a very deeply bonded way that apparently, and maybe nothing else in the universe does. We might be even more weird than we think.
Huh.
After all, Pharaoh and his kind, their heart is hardened. And God hardens their heart. They don't have a grasp of what we're talking about when we say something like, I feel.
Right.
They're already lost as soon as you said, I feel. That doesn't make sense.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's the red-faced Adam. That's
right.
I mean, emotional states have been detected in other animals. We seem to know the brain structures associated with emotional states, and
right.
we're kind of coming to some understanding with that. But
sure. That kind of makes sense in an evolutionary process. It's just like it's really strong in us. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like everything is about that. We build our whole society around those feelings. And
yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So I think we exemplify, and we are a little lesser than angels, but we are angels. And the reason that they want to make more of themselves is the same reason we want to. It's just that simple. We're the same animal.
Right.
Now, yeah, okay, we're subject to diseases. We don't have perfect healing. We can get cancer. We die of old age. Yeah, okay. And we're not enjoying the benefits of heaven where those problems have been solved. All right.
Right.
But that doesn't make us significantly different from what an angel is. In some very meaningful, fundamental ways.
When you put it that way, the angels have more justification in reproducing than we do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we're bringing babies into all kinds of suffering and problems. And
sure, they don't have that. They don't have that like dichotomy.
Yeah.
In reproduction, they go and they start filling their heaven.
Right.
And I'm sure at some point they get it full. And how many angelic, Homo sapien, fully evolved it takes to fill a heaven? I'm betting it's a lot more than 10 billion.
How many
it
can
might
dance
be something more than 100 billion, actually.
100 billion. That's not a meaningful number to me.
It's really not.
No, that's just.
Well, just take this Earth and multiply it by 12, and you'll be in the neighborhood.
Oof. We were talking at work the other night about somebody's a trillionaire now, and what if he gave 0.5% of his wealth to each person on the planet, and it's like $500 million to each person on the planet. I mean, it's $1 trillion is so much. It's such a big number, you know. it's unimaginable. But yeah, so 100 billion. I mean, even the amount.
I'm inclined to go over the dirty math with you. If our heaven, the heaven for this earth, represented by our elder Jesus, right? That guy.
Okay. Yeah.
In the seats around God's throne, measures 1,500 miles across, and it directly states that. And is spherical in shape, and it directly states that. And the floors were 1 mile in between floors, different levels. That would cover 75 Earth surfaces. If you took those floors out of heaven and just pasted them on like stickers, those floors would cover the Earth 75 times. Okay? Huh. So, and that's if the floors are a mile apart. Let's be ridiculous and put them really close to each other at a 1/4 mile apart. Okay? Totally. Or how about this? 1/10 of a mile apart. Now you have 750 Earth surfaces in our heaven. Usable. By the way, I covered up the oceans when I did that little math.
Wow.
Okay? So,
yeah.
Usable surface, 750 if they're 1/10 of a mile apart. And wow, that's a really big distance between floors in a building.
More than adequate.
More than, yeah, plenty of room for angels to fly wherever the heck they want with 1/10 of a mile.
You'd get weather.
But try to imagine how many people it would take to use up that amount of space. Where on this earth right now, if you took 8 billion people and you put them in the state of Texas in the United States in Northern America of the Americas,
they'd each get a 1/4 square mile or something. I've seen that data.
Yeah, it's 6.4 people per acre.
Right.
Or 4.6. I'm a little bit dyslexic. 4.6 people per acre in the state of Texas. 8 billion folks.
Which is comfortable.
Yeah, that's actually
not great, but it's okay.
You can actually live like that.
Yeah.
If you could create the infrastructure to move all the waste and move all the food in,
Right.
supply enough water to the area, every human on this earth could pretty easily live in Texas. And that's 8 billion folks. So I don't know what the efficient use of heaven would be, how many people would take to fill it. But I'm going to lowball it at 100 billion. But I think that's extreme lowballing. That's what I think it is.
Sounds nice.
So I would invite anyone to go and with the understanding that the Sermon on the Mount is not group but singular individual who actually does it, must be speaking of the Christ. He's the only one that ever does all that stuff. Try to read it. Picture yourself an apostle hearing Jesus reveal himself to you when before you didn't know that was Jesus. Wrap it up for us, Mac.
Yeah, everybody read Matthew 5-7 or don't. But if you do, try to think about this conversation while you do it. That's what I'm about to go do right after we log off here. So I'm going to go boil some more water for tea and sit up with the Bible and read that a little bit. So, and, take some time to show some gratitude to you again, Richard. Thank you. And thanks to everybody in the chat there. And I think that's all I need to say for wrapping it up.
This whole thing has been a humbling experience for me. It makes me strong enough, brave enough to love, which is a new experience for me starting at age 42.
Wow.
To genuinely be able to love without condition, without judgment, without being haughty. So I want you all to know that I really do appreciate you coming by. Mac, I appreciate you individually for participating, and I really appreciate that. And to everyone who comes by now or in the future might see this, peace and respect to you all. And I want you all to know that I truly look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Till next time. Oh, peace and respect. Commander just showed up. Commander 401. Sorry, it's closing, buddy. Peace.